if you're not inclusive on the inside, then you're never going to be inclusive on the outside.
I think good criticism has to take in context.
That stopped me from actually taking the leap.
The work spoke for itself.
Everybody's in a rush to become a star overnight.
Yeah, in the amazing years, the early 90s.
Wearing a unique, beautiful piece is always going to catch someone's attention.
I'm not afraid to tussle. I'm not afraid of a little bit of a fight. I'm not afraid of trouble.
You don't know what I like. I'm a wide range of a person.
Creativity is always spontaneity.
This needs to be a collab between you and me, so that's what we did.
Hello to the Real Situation podcast with Jason Campbell. And we are reaching the end of our first season of the podcast. And to that end, we're going to approach this episode, our 12th episode, differently than the prior episodes. And it's different in the sense that I am going to be now in the hot seat. We're going to look back on our previous episodes. We're gonna talk about the guests, and we're going to sort of interrogate what we discovered and what was unearthed in that first season. And to do so, my producer Madison Jaet is going to be our guest this week, and she is going to interview me to really go down the short but we feel very exciting history of the podcast. So welcome to Madison's always here. She's usually in the background, but yeah, she's in the foreground for this episode, or 12th episode, to talk about what we have accomplished thus far, what we have learned from our guests, etc., etc., etc. Madison, welcome.
Thank you, Jason. I'm so excited to do this episode with you. I think we've had such a great season and there's so much to talk about. So let's get into it. I'm excited.
Let's do it. And also, this is, to look back is also to look forward. We have some exciting sort of developments for a second season. And so this is, this sort of juncture is an important one to mark so we can move on to the next chapter.
Definitely. So before we do that, I wanted to start with your backstory. As a professional in the fashion industry, you've had a huge career, a very memorable one I look up to. And I wanted you to take us through that, take us through your career from when you were young to where you are now, because I feel like you've lived a lot of lives. And I think we're all very interested to know them.
Well, it's so funny. Yes, of course you would want to know that. But Madison, my career, I'm known as and seen as an enigmatic person in the fashion industry. I've been working in this industry for nearly 30 years, let's say. I'm known across the globe because I've touched all regions of this planet, working in this business. However, not everyone quite knows. Not everyone quite knows, where the seat I sit in, what I do. They know me for my style. Some may know me for my writing. The people know me for different things, but they may not know collectively what I do. I'll try to give, and it may not necessarily be easy to express my resume. But Madison, I started off as a model agent, yeah, and
Wow.
that was the beginning of my serial entrepreneurship. I think if anything has defined my career is that I've just started businesses, I've worked on my own terms, and I've done things that I have wanted to do, have been talented enough to endeavor into, and I've really worked on my own terms. So firstly, I started off as a modeling agency in New York City. I worked for an agency and then subsequently started one with my partner, Richard Pelzer, who we ended up just, building out this savvy agency called Mega Models, placing models across the globe, in Japan, in Europe, all over the place, and really had a very early success as an agent in my early 20s. That's what I first started off doing. And then I think, I won't get in all the finer details, but just the bigger points. But
Mhm.
then technology, the internet, I think
Yes.
that really was definitive of my career, or allowed me to go in different directions. So once the internet started, I moved to London to work as an agent. And
Okay.
then I came back to New York. And then one of my university friends told me that he was working at agency.com. And agency.com in New York City was the first agency to handle anything internet related. And they
Oh,
happened
wow.
to have been the agency that built out Gucci's site. Gucci was one of the
Oh,
first
amazing.
fashion company to have internet presence. And
Mhm.
then my roommate from university told me about the internet. The minute he told me about the internet, I was like, okay, well, my life has changed. And,
Yeah.
it'll give me the freedom to, after getting that bug of living internationally in London, it'll give me the freedom to live around the world. Paris was my destination. So I came back to New York to get my I had a green card. I'm from Jamaica. So
Mhm.
I came back to New York to get my American citizenship, and then I was able to set my path to Paris. However, the internet exploded during that time, and this friend of mine from university and I started a company, literally an online department store, Madison. We're selling everything from
Yes.
plastic jewelry to sofa and everything in
Amazing.
between. I'm
Yeah.
the creative director. He's the chief technologist. We were working in Silicon Alley.
Wow.
That was the New York equivalent at the time, on 18th Street in a loft, like two
You
stories.
always surprise me when we go back into the past. You always have so many stories, so many things you've done. Like, I love it.
Oh, oh,
You're
no,
the
no, no.
best.
I was there. I was on the front
Yeah,
lines.
you
I was
were.
on the front lines of that. And the company was called netsetgoods.com. It was a
Mhm.
very sort of, story time. There was another company called boo.com. They got $300 million. We got $3 million. They went down within a year because overspending, whatever the case. And we went down a couple years after. But in any case, that was just a seminal time
Mhm.
in well, fashion history, but like the history of culture as it relates to the internet. That was the time that all the companies were formulated, the Expedias, the Amazons, all the great hopes of like, oh, we can do this online, we're going to be able to do this online, buy our tickets, buy this, buy. All of that was the genesis of
Yeah,
what we're now living,
exactly.
and taken for granted. So I was very much on the front lines of that. And if you ask
You
Natalie,
jumped. You
huh?
took that leap. You jumped. I feel
Oh,
like
yes,
with you,
without a
there's no
doubt.
fear. It's like, let's just do this and let's get it done. And I'm here.
100%. And one of the things that also defined my career is that I was always been a trend forecaster. I've
Yes.
always detect things early and identify what was going to move culture later on down the line. And so this was part and parcel. I didn't tell you about all my trend forecasting writing prior to this technology era,
But I
but
even see it in your vintage clothing right now. I feel like it's innate in you. Like your taste, your eye, it goes where you set that foot first and then it ends up following, but you have this innate thing to lead those trends and to know where they're going. And I really see that in our conversations, in the conversations in the podcast, and just through the clothing you sell. You kind
well,
of you
yes,
know
that's
where it
always
goes, you
been.
know where it's going.
Yes, that's always been defining of my. I love newness, even if we're speaking about vintage. I love
Mhm.
identifying where things are going to travel. That I
Yes.
find to be fascinating, and it's a gift. It's not necessarily it's a gift that's been developed into a skill, but it's something that I understand innately. And so yes, at that time, working with a new technology like that,
Mhm.
it was fascinating. And as I expressed, Natalie Mazinet will tell you that Net-a-Porter was the genesis of that was from netsetgoods.com. And I then went on to, and a lot of people may know me from this era. I had an online magazine called JC Report, my namesake essentially, and that was a very important and a precursor to very much doing this. I always wanted to have a voice,
Yeah.
my own voice, a voice that was unfettered, a voice that I can express the truth. As you may know, fashion is not very good on on, speaking the real deal.
Yeah.
It never has been. And one of the reasons why this podcast is called The Real Situation is because real has always underscore whatever I
Yeah.
participated in.
You
And
keep
so
it real.
JC Report was all about covering the
Mm.
industry everywhere from Australia to Brazil and anywhere in between. I went to every fashion week. I was at every trade show. I trolled all the streets of over there. I used to do city guides on Tokyo, on
Wow.
Rio, on Paris. I mean, when I'm looking back, Madison, all the things that I've done, that's why I can sit in this seat right now. And you can't tell me nothing about anything regarding fashion and culture because I did it and I was on the front lines of it. I
You
wasn't
lived
an
it.
armchair participant at all. So those things really, from the trend forecasting, the identifying products and designers and movements early, they have really always underscored my world. And alongside of that, while I'm doing these editorial work, I've been the personal stylist to high net worth individuals. So I've been styling these high net worth individuals for like 25 years. So while I'm able to write about, the designers and trends and movements, I've been in the unique position of having an unlimited budget to also procure whatever that is out there for
Right.
that audience that
Know your
really
client.
consumes
You know your
fashion.
client, which I think is such a great thing to know, I feel like a lot of people don't know their clients, and you've set yourself up in a position where you used to be a client, then you were the entrepreneur, the creative, the one leading it, and now you're in this unique position where you're all three at the same time.
Well,
And I
yes.
really think you know your client, and you can tell by the way you speak and the way you sell and the way you engage in these conversations. And I think that's something very important that is really respectable, because I feel like a lot of the times now, specifically, clients are turned into numbers, and what can we take from them, and take. And I have never felt that with you. I've always felt you've interviewed clients of yours in the season.
Yes,
So it's
absolutely.
definitely a back and forth, it's a give and take, it's a dance, it's a flow. And I very much appreciate that about your work and your
Well, here's the
career.
thing. Yeah, and you're speaking, let's clarify this a little bit. You're speaking to, particularly when I work with my personal styling clients, that's the
Yes,
lane that, I work with high net worth individual because they can afford my rates. They can pay for my honesty.
yes.
Essentially, like I'm not being paid to be a yes man. I'm being
No,
paid to help a client cultivate a unique style for him or her for their world, whether they're a socialite, whether they're a business tycoon, whether they're a Hollywood celebrity, or whatever the case may be. I've also been very good at understanding a client's unique profile and unique needs for their styling world. Absolutely, and I love that part. And that's something I've never really been able to talk about so much because my clients are such bold-faced names. They're not
mm,
names that I just throw out there in the world. And a lot of it has been very private. But yeah, not I told you, we started this by saying that, my a lot of my work has been enigmatic because some of it has not been able to be discussed publicly. But yes, that has been a very important work that I have done. I've probably, given so many brands millions and millions of dollars over the last 25 years that I've been doing this job because I through my clients have the spending power to attribute to the different brands and so
that's
forth. So that
awesome.
has been amazing.
That's
Love
amazing.
that. Love, love, love,
It
love
is.
that. And so many stories under that umbrella. Too many stories to get into
We
in this
should have an
conversation.
episode where you go through your stories, because you have great ones.
I do. That I do.
And you're a storyteller. Everything you do, it's a way to tell, you're saying something, you're leading us somewhere. And I love that. So, I feel like that's a great segue to go into our first question, which is, what was your goal with the real situation, and what inspired you to make this podcast happen?
Well, Madison, as you know, I used to do a podcast with a co-host. It was called The Conversations with Jason Campbell and Henrietta Galina. Henrietta was my co-host. She has since moved back to London. And then I was really sitting on the sideline. I always like having a voice in this industry. And for me, my unfeathered voice, my independent voice was always, it was for me to execute. It was not going to be had by joining, a Condé Nast or a company that, a company like that where there are parameters and rules and all this sort of things. I'm a, I like to speak honestly and real. Hence the name of this podcast, The Real Situation. And so I've always loved having a voice. And so after my partner moved back to London, I took a break. And I was writing a bit. I was just sort of putting my voice in writing. I wrote two sort of seminal the cover stories during that time. One for New York Magazine on the history of Black models, and the other one was Nicole Kidman for a cover story. Nicole Kidman. I don't usually do celebrity stories, but Nicole Kidman for the Perfect magazine that was really explosive, really viral, and all the things. But in any case, I decided to just sell vintage during that time, take away some of the
Mm.
intensity and some of the output, and just focus on one thing. I got to tell you, it was fantastic. I
Yeah.
just loved, selling vintage, traveling the world and just buying and selling. But I was always sitting on the sideline, knowing that I would jump back in when the time was right. I wanted
Mm.
to, while I have so many mixed feelings on this industry, I never stopped being interested and curious and informed about what's going on. It's a mark of my character. And for me, if I continue to have the interest, then I can still have a voice. And
Exactly.
so that was, I finally, after a 3 year hiatus, I pulled the trigger to start a podcast again and to do it alone, and to discuss the issues that I want to and to talk to the talents that I want to. And I'm so thrilled to be back.
And it's been a great season this far, and I really want to know, as season one is coming to an end with one more episode after this one, how do you feel that your original vision has evolved or changed, or is it what you thought it was going to be? But how has the process kind of shaped it?
Well, I have to tell you, I've really enjoyed the conversations that I've had this season. Several of the guests I've been personally connected to. I've known, their career trajectory, history, all those sort of things. Some of them I've really known. So it was really, and they were deliberate guests to communicate certain messages to the audience because I know what they have lived. I loved just talking to these talents, and these are people that are really talented, that
Yeah.
have worked really hard, that have reinvented themselves in different situations. They're the real deal. They're
Oh,
the and
yeah.
and they came to really express meaningful things. And I think we had some great conversations, and I'm really grateful to all of the guests that came through this season. The one that I know well, and the ones that I didn't know very well, like Louis Pisano, for example, and Jay Tibbet. Loved talking to those younger talents, for example. So no, I'm really pleased and proud of how the first season unfolded.
And looking back, what's one of the biggest lessons you've learned from hosting these conversations?
Well, actually, and maybe this was going to come up in your questioning, but one
Yes.
of the things that really stayed with me and inspired me and ultimately sort of rose to the top as a theme was joy and optimism. Joy and optimism, because here's the deal, Madison. There's a lot of jadedness, there's a
Mhm.
lot of disingenuousness that taking place in this business. There's a lot of people that are still operating, working, existing in this business who are cosplaying happiness, who are really faking the funk. You know, their creativity has been eclipsed. Some of their income has been eclipsed. They're being, you know, there's abusive work environments and all this. There's a lot that is not positive in this industry. And so many of the guests, they had a positive strain about whether the work that they're doing or the environment that they exist in or the talents that they see out there. That to me was really the takeaway. Like it put a smile on my face at certain points of it in the podcast, interviewing some of these talents, where they were still excited and still joyful. And Edward Buchanan started off that energy in the first episode. No one came on here that was like, "Woe is me," and like, "Oh well, yeah, the industry is so bad and so this and so this." Everyone found a lane or found something that they were joyful about and kept them inspired. Even to the latest one with Camilla Stark. Oh my God, Camilla like has been in this industry for so long, and she was just so positive and so grateful for the network that that she developed, that she's still working with. Like all of that sort of stuff was really, really encouraging to me, and put a smile on my face.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like that's something I also took away from this first season, just the perseverance in everyone's career and the honesty everyone had within themselves to keep going, to be honest in the industry. And that's why they're a big deal. That's why they're in this podcast, because they moved forward and were inspired by curiosity and everything around them and the evolution of things. And that's definitely
Precisely.
something I love about this season, which also is why was it important for Edward Buchanan to be your very first guest?
Well, I have a great love for Edward Buchanan, full stop. Edward's a very one of my closest friends. I've known Edward for more than 30 years. An amazing, amazing human being, an amazing talent, an amazing tastemaker.
Yeah.
Someone that really, especially over the last year, who has really gotten his flowers that was kept from him for a very long time. That was kept from him, and so I was in Milan last year when Edward sort of explosion in the Bottega Veneta campaign, a recognition that was long overdue when he was in the campaign. Just as a friend visiting him over the summer last summer, and it was just great to see all that energy, like his flowers literally coming in by the hour. It was amazing.
Mhm.
And the history, Edward and I were supposed to do this podcast together. In fact, we recorded a couple episodes, and you know
Wow.
what? We may show that episodes in the future, as a something from the vault for the audience. But Edward and I were going to do this podcast together, and as I said, we had recorded. But Edward's career, his work, his design work, then really did not allow him to be able to sit in the seat and to co-host this with me. However, I wanted to hear from it. Then it just made perfect sense. It made perfect
Mhm.
sense for him to become the subject, especially all that he had experienced over the last year. It was a no-brainer. It just made sense to really drill down on all that he has experienced in his career, and also the wonderful explosion at this chapter, during this chapter, of his career and all of that. So that was really important, and he was just great in revealing all that he has experienced in the business. And also, Edward is someone who has not. He continues to be an activist while he's in the belly of fashion right now. He continues to like call things out and raise issues in a way that a lot more people have become so fearful to do. And I appreciate that about his stance.
Yes, he definitely set the tone for the season. I think it was the perfect first guest. And also throughout the season, you've highlighted a lot of Black creatives whose contributions haven't always received the recognition they deserved. People like Edward, like Rodney Patterson, John Moore, Keturah. Why was it important for you to create space for these conversations? And why are these the voices you wanted to spotlight?
Well, upon having those conversations, I hope that it was evident why those talents were there. Look how amazing! Look what impact Rodney is having
Yeah.
with his hats out there in culture. They are turning up everywhere. This is an independent business. Rodney has been in fashion for the last 40 years. He's had such a storied career from doing windows at Saks Fifth Avenue,
Mm.
to being a stylist to then, doing his hat brand. That such a story.
I love
Why
his hats.
he should be profiled
I
all
love his
over the
hats.
place.
I completely agree. And he has so much personality and pizzazz and so much imagination and creativity. He was definitely one of my favorite episodes.
Amazing,
Yes,
amazing. I love what he's doing. Katura, I really want the
I love
audience to
Katura.
really look into what that girl is doing at
I
Tibby.
agree.
Look into what that woman is doing at Tibby. She is really that formatting, those styling clinics
Yeah.
that she is doing. Like, hello, brands,
Brands.
calling all brands.
Yes.
Look at what Katura Drake is doing at Tibby. That is really, really like no one is doing that. It's really powerful stuff.
Couture Drake is cool.
It's
Like, he just
really
is cool. And he's
Oh, it's
so
like
intelligent.
handing a script to brand as to it's like literally like an immediate sell through. This is how it's done. Put it in the bag and take it home and take it to work. It is fabulous what she's
Yes.
doing. That is like that's her efforts are impacting the bottom line at Tibby in a significant way. You could tell. You could tell.
You
And
can tell.
I experienced Katura because when in my vintage world, she'll buy vintage from me and anything she puts up and suggests to her audience, oh my God, the response. Katura recommended. Yes, I saw this on
Yes.
Katura's page. Katura, no, fabulous.
Anything Couture would recommend to me, I would say yes.
Oh, she's
No doubt
beautiful.
about it.
She has great style.
Mhm.
Love what she's doing. She is very much. I can't highlight her enough. And then like John Moore, I had to have Karen Binns on here
Mhm.
because hello,
Hello,
John
Karen.
Moore is
Yeah.
John Moore died and could have gone away without any recognition. I don't know if you understand how. The taste that John Moore has, the
Mhm.
collection that he has. Like that's also, I don't think that also got enough real estate. John Moore has an unbelievable collection of vintage. He bought some of the very best, some of my very best pieces. And I
Yeah.
know from other vendors as well, he buys the very best. So he has accumulated over the years, has accumulated such phenomenal vintage, museum quality vintage alongside doing some of the most powerful styling work in the industry that didn't always get, the kind of recognition that it should. Back at a time when Vibe magazine, he was a contributor at Vibe magazine that was setting the tone for so much of what the fashion industry marrying with like urban culture and so many things like that. John was such a visionary and like someone like an Andre Leon Talley,
Yeah.
who he didn't even get his recognition and he was so visible. So you could imagine someone like John, his passing could have just happened and no one would be none the
I
wiser.
love that you wanted to speak about his legacy. And I think when someone passes away and we choose to remember them and talk about them, it's beautiful and it's important. And again, I think you talking about his legacy and inviting Karen to speak on his, not on his behalf, but have that conversation with you was an extremely beautiful episode that I'm sure so many people appreciated. And I hope more people hear it because, yes, now we must be the voices that keep him alive. And I do feel that a lot of the times when people pass away in the industry, it's like, okay, well, another one, but it shouldn't be another one. They should be kept alive, and it's kept alive through reflection, conversation. So I believe that episode is a very important one. And speaking about legacies should be something that this podcast will definitely continue to have.
100%. I think that's and it's funny, I'm not really sentimental like that. Like
Mhm.
I'm not, but what's right is right, you
Yeah.
know? And Edward said something in the first episode about telling our own stories. Like that was one of his important themes. Like it's important to tell our story.
Mhm.
And I dare say John wasn't, a lot of us are not great at telling our own story. John was not great at telling his own story, and he didn't have an opportunity to rectify that. And so, yes, that was a little piece that I could do in order to help tell someone's story. And to sort of, to frame your question as well, I think that happens with a lot of us Black people. We have our head down, we're doing
Mhm.
the work, and we just continue to do the work. We may have to pivot along the way, but we don't necessarily get to be celebrated. We don't necessarily get to, articulate the path that we've taken and from whence we've come. No. So, I think as an editor, as a journalist, yeah, that's my role to recognize and to give space for those conversations. And I love them. It's really been
Me
rewarding for me
too.
to have them.
One thing I've taken away from this season, and we kind of spoke on it in the beginning of the episode, was hearing how so many of your guests have built meaningful careers in fashion on their own terms. And this is from someone who is starting off her career, starting off in the fashion industry. And it's definitely a time when the industry feels incredibly competitive, which it definitely has always been. But now you have thousands of applications, internal hiring, downsizing, and low pay. And in a world where you can't really, I mean, you need to make it work somehow, but it's an industry fueled by passion. So we definitely want to make it happen. And it's definitely been very inspiring to hear stories from people who took risks, started businesses, and created opportunities for themselves. Because I feel that this is something the youth has to be reminded of. You can take that leap. You can make it happen for yourself in an ever-changing and evolving industry. How does that reflect your own experience working in fashion, and what do you hope listeners are learning from those journeys, including your own, as people from a younger generation and an older one getting to listen?
Well, if I have to sort of um, use a term here, it would be not asking for permission. And that
I
was
love that.
how I endeavored into a lot of my entrepreneurial roles, is that I wasn't asking for permission. But I have to maybe take it back a little bit. During my time in fashion, I did interview at the Condé Nast, wanting to, to be a writer,
Mhm.
work to work at magazines and so on and so forth. But I recognized very early, Madison, that my personality, I'm a leader. B, I'm a nice guy. C, I was never going to be corrupted by this industry and the value system of this industry. I wasn't going to become this asshole, and feeling like, this above everyone because I have good taste and I work in fashion. That was very much the
No.
time that I came up in. It was very nose in the air, and I
That
was like,
still exists. That still very much exists. I still see it all the time.
true, true. It definitely exists. It definitely still exists. It was more so back then.
Yes,
But
for
hell no,
sure.
I was not gonna, acquiesce myself to any, especially in a negative way or in a pretentious way, to
Mhm.
anyone in order to do the work that I was qualified to do. And that's what I feel to be the case for a lot of these upstarts and entrepreneurs. Let me highlight Louis Pisano, highlight Jay Tibbett, Nick Polina,
Yes.
all of those guys, all of those individuals, they have really just established, created careers on their terms. They are all three of those individuals are technology savvy. They're social media savvy, and they've built their careers right out there in public, not asking an industry,
Unafraid.
unafraid, not asking an industry permission to do anything,
That's
and
another theme
have
with this
built
season.
their
It's
own audience. And
Yes.
that's what I did. That I have to dare say, like in a way, I have a sort of a big brother vantage. I look and I love it. I have a great appreciation for like Jay and Lewis and Nick. They're just like out there, like every day you see them online, like waxing lyrical about whatever that is, you know, a sociological perspective from Jay on like,
Yeah.
you know, why rich people do this and all of this. It
Yes.
is amazing. And also it's proprietary. They have made what they do their own. That's their brand. That's their, you know, that's their approach.
And
And
they give
that's
back.
wonderful.
They teach. And I
Ah,
feel like and so do you and a lot of your guests, which is something extremely important that I have a lot of hope for in doing this season with you it's people who teach as well and who don't gatekeep what they're doing in order to have the life that they currently have. And I feel like that's extremely helpful, extremely important to give back. You know, you've built this audience and people are following you as a leader for a reason. You know, part of being a leader isn't only taking, which I already spoke about, but it's about mentoring. It's about being able to say, be unafraid. This is how I did it. Take these steps and take your own steps. Make your own steps, most importantly, because you won't be able to follow a recipe. And I feel like that's a lie that we've been sold, you know? Go to school, then apply here, then do this, and you'll earn respect and whatever, and you'll get ahead in your career. And that's definitely a way to do it that I am not disrespecting in any way. But I think these people have really much set a tone of look over here, look at the possibilities that you can make happen if you are unafraid and believe in yourself and
100.
come join the journey, you know? And that's
100.
something you do a lot. You set that tone of I've been in this industry and I'm not only and I'm teaching. I'm here to teach. I'm here to give back my knowledge. These are the people I've met along the way that have a lot of knowledge to give as young professionals like Jay, like Nick, like Lewis, and your industry legends.
No, it's very true. Thanks for that observation. That teaching is really that's the takeaway. If there's to be a
Yes.
takeaway from these conversation, it is there's some kind of prescription that you can apply from the conversations that we have with these experienced talents in this industry. Absolutely. And as you said, these individuals they've been very candid about this information. There's been no gatekeeping in that sense, and that's super important to me. That's super important to me. But I appreciate you making that observation as a takeaway from this podcast. Absolutely, that's so true.
You also interviewed industry legends like Sasha, Karen Binns, Chucky, Camilla. Why was it important to share their stories and experiences with a younger generation that may not know the impact they had on the industry?
Well, here's one of my thing, and I think I mentioned it a couple times in the conversations,
Yes.
or is it something that I say a fair amount these days? Like, you know, the young talents do not have to think that they have to start from scratch. A lot of things have been done, have people have done it before them, and you can use what has come before you as inspiration as there's a leitmotif that exists, and what I was trying to do with those guests is to bring them in to communicate the vast experience that they have had, the ways that they have done, the myriad things that they have done, and to really communicate to an audience that like there you don't have to think that oh my God, like Sasha was a wrote a book on styling, however a number of years ago when those
I
books
love Sasha, by the
yeah,
way.
Sasha's amazing, writing behind the
I love
of
her so much.
of
Yeah.
the Hollywood industry and writing about how that was done. Like that's major. Like right now we're talking about Law Roach and like as though Law Roach sort of like came out of osmosis, he most certainly
Mhm.
did not. You
No.
know, there was a whole tradition before him, and Sasha wrote a book about that tradition. So let's go back, and it's not to dismiss or discredit anything that Laura Roach is doing, but let's go back to a blueprint and let's talk to a grande dame about how she did it, and also, most importantly, why she is still relevant. Why I see her at Chelsea Market, and
Yeah.
she is like literally turning it out with fashion from on a daily, like literally still communicating
She's a
fashion from
star.
such an
She's
inspiring place.
definitely a star. Yeah.
That's major. That's absolutely major, and that's not just some woman, you know, in her colorful coats. No, that's coming from a an experienced, studied, qualified
Yes.
place, and that
Exactly.
should be understood, and also understood that where one may end up in the trajectory of a career. You may be a 25-year-old woman right now, but at one time you're going to be a 57-year-old woman, and you don't lose your fashion chops necessarily. You can continue to have them, but just it just turns up in a different way. Like I love to show,
Complete.
and I'm an older fashion person now. I've been through so much, so yes, of course I'm gonna understand the value of that perspective and understand what that should do to a younger audience. And if I'm in the position to play that role, I love it.
I agree. And I think most of them have reinvented themselves. And seeing that as a younger and as an older audience member, I feel like it just tells you it's never too late, you know?
Exactly.
And you can keep going and keep reinventing and keep working really hard and make your path. So,
100%. What, and again, these talents are at a certain chapter in their careers, and the glee, you know, the optimism
yes.
that they operate with, I that cannot be diminished. That no,
No.
that cannot be diminished. I really want to highlight just how important that is, and genuine. It's not. They're not. This is not cosplaying. This
Mm-mm.
is their genuine self, and that to me was inspiring. Because trust me, I find myself in my shade of jade as well. Like, oh my God, like and but however, in speaking to some of these guests, it really has like reinforced the positivity, or at least the positive aspects of the industry.
Yes, 100%. Um, is there a moment or a conversation from this season that has really stayed with you, one that you didn't expect? Thinking about maybe Brittany or Nick or Edward, you know, I feel like there's or Chucky. Chucky was a great interview, by the way.
Well, actually,
I think Chucky, honestly, like made if I were to pick an episode that made this season come together and kind of had an aspect of everyone, it was Chucky.
so
I
I love
absolutely
see
loved Chucky.
that's why I love doing this, because I love the feedback. I love the different perspectives on the viewing and the listening. I gotta say, Chucky, yeah, Chucky was so emotional. And you know, Chucky is one of my closest, like
Yeah.
Edward. Chucky is like a close friend of mine. I've been a beared witness to his career from the front lines. And I love Chucky's interview because I love how emotional, and I know that Chucky is emotional, but Chucky loves what he does. He's
Yeah.
felt incredibly blessed to have landed on such a career that is exactly what he's supposed to be doing, and he just loves this business of hair, and you could
Mhm.
tell he broke down at times. You could
Yeah.
tell how important and how just an emotional stake he has in his career, and he communicated that he did not sort of manage that in our conversation. He communicated
100%.
that, and I really appreciate it. And he was in a safe space, of course, with me, to be exactly who he is,
And
and
talking
I
about
appreciated that. And funny you mentioned Brittany in this conversation as well, because you know, Brittany, I adore Brittany. She's a client of mine through my vintage world, but also I've been paying such close attention to this lane that that she has developed as this single woman, with agency, living life on her terms that doesn't necessarily involve marriage, a man, and children. That narrative to me was super important. I really wanted to have that conversation. I think is a super important narrative in culture right now. And for her as a brave entrepreneur, young woman who's just charting her own course. I've been really wanting to tell her story, and I'm so glad that she joined us to do so. And I felt that her story was also, it was unexpected and may have been unexpected for the podcast, but one that was very important for me to tell. And I thought I did a good job, and she did a good job we did a good job in capturing, this interesting me moon, my wedding situation.
Yeah,
Loved it. Lived.
totally. And I think Brittany is inspiring to me as a woman because it's, again, you have time. And you don't need anyone telling you that you don't, or that you're late to the game, or to getting married, having kids, or building a career. Like Brittany left, she went to New York. She was like, I'm gonna make this career for myself. She's an influencer. She's gorgeous. She has amazing taste. She had her own wedding. And at the end of the day, what I really took away from that interview is you have time, you know? And there's no time limit. And you make your own path. And I think Brittany
100.
is really cool in that way because it's not that she doesn't want a family. It's not that she wants it all too. And you can have it
Yes.
all
Yes.
at different moments in your life, though. And time won't run out. And you should be confident in where you are because I feel like we are so quick to look towards the future when we'll finally have this and we'll finally be able to do this and we'll finally have enough respect, enough money, enough knowledge, enough whatever the case is to be able to accomplish something that we waste time looking at where we are right now, what this moment is giving us, how to be grateful for everything you have accomplished thus far, and where your life is. Where your life is now is awesome. It's great.
Yep.
And you should take that in. And I feel that Brittany really inspired that in her conversation. And so did Chucky. I mean, I
Yes.
think Chucky, I loved his stories were amazing, going to Paris, being next to Naomi, and being like, oh, I can do your hair because no one else can do it. And really having a skill that gets better as you work on it and not giving up and just working hard. Again, we also interviewed people that work their asses off. And I think that is so respectable. And from influencers like Jay, vintage sellers like Nick, I like Nick Polina. I just believe working hard is another great theme in this episode. As long as you work your ass off and you believe in what you're doing, you will get there. But enjoy the process, enjoy the journey.
That's very true. I'm glad you captured that message as well because yeah, I don't think any of the guests made it seem breezy and easy. No, I think
No,
all of them communicated a message of industry that they put
totally.
in the work and put in the time. They had the talent, but the work and the time was put in. And also their talents also took them across the globe. That's the thing.
Yeah.
The talent really brought them wonderful experiences in their world for sure.
Yes, and they weren't arrogant, which I also really appreciated. Something I loved about Chucky, he was like, plan before you get to set, have it ready, know what you're doing. Because then a situation comes where you're lost and you know what? You're prepared. And being prepared is so important and it takes hard work. It takes not being like, oh, I'll just wing it. I'm good at this, so whatever. No, put in the work, put in the time because it'll pay off. And it did. It did for all these people. And I feel like that was
100%.
amazing.
100%. No, your observation is astute.
So, I feel like this segues into two questions.
Mhm.
What do you hope we've been talking about this, but what do you hope listeners took away from season one, and what are you looking forward in season two?
Well, I think you, as we were speaking before, I think that teaching, I think you captured that well. The takeaway is that from the experiences of these talents, there's a page or more in their book that you can take and you can apply to your career and to your life as how to participate, as it specifically as it relates to fashion. That there is a page or several pages that you can take out of their book and apply it to your life. There should be some prescription, something to learn, and I think you've been good in capturing anything from the teaching to the hard work and so forth that's been intrinsic to all of their communication, to the doing things on their own terms and all of those sort of things. Yes. And I think that's why we're doing this episode. I think this episode is to kind of collate the season and to really highlight some of the pervasive themes that linked the talent and linked the guests. And I think that you were good on identifying them. And I agree. I absolutely agree that teaching and that optimism. I always want to come back to that
Oh,
again. Many people are working in fashion. Not many unhappy people are working in fashion.
mhm.
And I would say that the guests that we had, I'm not saying that they don't have their times of displeasure and unhappiness, but I think ultimately what they all communicated was that from a creative perspective, that they are very much thrilled and motivated to work in the capacity that they do and that they have. I think that is, and remember, this is the Real Situation podcast. The guests have been for a reason. They're here to talk the real deal. I'm not here to have people give me party line talk. I
Mm-mm.
think that's what they have done. They have come and they have spoken the real deal as it relates to their experience.
Yes,
So yes, that's an important takeaway for me.
completely. And for our listeners, take that leap, you know. If you're sad in fashion, leave and make something yourself and find that joy. But
100%. And you
definitely
asked about looking
possible.
forward to to
Season
season
two.
two. I'm really looking forward to season two. It's not all crafted yet, but what I want to be is stronger and better. I want more guests in this vein, most definitely. I like the tone. I like the tone that's been established thus far. I
Mhm.
like the real conversational tone of the podcast. I like the safe space sort of energy of it all. Let's just come here and talk. I'm not here for a hot take.
Yes.
I'm not here to blow up your world at all, but I want to find out about what you truly experience and what that experience can bring to this audience. So I want to have more of a conversation. I want to have a conversation with more bold-faced names, like, talents that people will also easily identify
Mhm.
and drill down on their experience. That often has people lean in a little bit more with personalities that already have let's say, a bigger profile. All our guests have profiled. All our guests, that's why they're here. They have a profile. But let's raise the profile a little bit and continue in this conversational vein and this teaching this messaging around how you can take the experience from someone else and apply it to your own world. I really want to continue in that vein. It's just natural for this stage of my career.
And would you like to introduce our final guest for season one?
Yes, yes. I'm thrilled, and our final guest, I feel, is very much the real situation coded. And her name is Cherise Kenyon, and Cherise is a journalist, a London-based journalist, and she's a part of this "Look Who's Talking Now" series in the vein of Jay Tibbet and also Louis Pisano. These voices online specifically that are so astute, that are reading the liner notes of this industry, that I feel are really where the intelligence in this industry currently lies. And they make me excited in the way that some of the guests have. But Charisse, I'm really, really interested in speaking to her about how she approaches her content and her interrogation of this industry on a daily. So Charisse will be our final guest for the season, and then we'll have a new and different look for season 2, and I'm looking forward to that as well.
Me too. I am so excited. I feel like season 1 was our playground, and now season 2 can finally, like, it can be the one we built where we want to
Exactly.
play. So I'm very much looking forward to it. This has been like an amazing season. I'm so happy to be producing this podcast and be working with you. This has definitely been a highlight for me. So thank you for that.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you here, Madison, working together on this podcast. And it's amazing how like a product comes together. It's not without some effort. Like it just doesn't, this all doesn't land. We have to organize it, of course. But it's been a real pleasure. It's been a real, let's call it a labor of love. It really is a labor of love. This is not like a, like a money-making project, let's say. This is very much a product that brings intellectual rewards.
Yes, I see. And thank you to our editor, Aiden, who's going to be editing this podcast. Hi, Aiden.
Thank
We
you.
love and appreciate Aiden too.
100%. Thank you very much. Well, that brings us to the close of this episode. And Madison, thank you so much. I like being the subject and really
You're a great subject. I love talking to you always.
Forcing me to go back into the archives of this podcast. And this was really fun. This was really fun, and I think important and informative to the audience. For those who have not been viewing the podcast, hopefully this is a trigger to go and check out some of the prior episodes and see what some of our amazing guests has discussed with us.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
Thank you guys all so much. Thank you, Jason.
Ciao, ciao, Madison.
Ciao.